What do you want to be when you grow up? What college are you going to go to? What's your major? What are you going to do after you graduate? When are you going to get married? Are you going to have any kids? What do you do? Do those questions sound familiar? Do you remember having answers for them when they were asked? Do you have answers for them right now? From my observation, the moment that we enter the educational system, we were forced to choose one school, one major, one career, one partner, one job, at least one kid, and the list goes on. And this has driven me crazy. This idea of choosing just one had put me in analysis paralysis mode for a very long time. To be honest, there is one thing that my Filipino immigrant parents encouraged, and that was to go to college. And that's when I felt the pressure to choose just one, and it paralyzed me. The first 2 years of my college career, I took a whole bunch of one-on-one classes because I had so many interests and so many curiosities, paths that I've never walked on before, paths that I never explored, jobs I never knew existed. Again, the only instruction I got from my parents was go to college. And if I did have any questions, they would say, go ask your teachers. But even when I would ask my teachers or my guidance counselors or career advisors any questions, they typically reverted to the same old messaging. Just choose one. And for some reason, that never landed for me. So wanting to make my college advisors happy, I did choose a major, and it was secondary education. But then for some reason, I started thinking about how limited that all felt. Working out one school, having one classroom, working with this one administration in this one principal in this one neighborhood, teaching this one grade, teaching this one curriculum. I felt myself feeling uncomfortable being contained in that way. And so then I asked myself, is there a career where I can still teach, but I'd get to bring students from all over the world? That I wouldn't be the one that's only teaching, but I would be able to bring all different kinds of teachers? That we didn't just teach on one kind of curriculum, but we learned how to live a better life? Is there something where I can have influence beyond the classroom, where I can explore other paths, be invested in other people's dreams, especially my students, beyond those four walls? Is there a career big enough where I don't feel contained of just choosing just one? So the best idea I had at the time was becoming a talk show host. And so I switched my major in my third year and graduated with a degree in communication studies. But can I be honest? I think I got the wrong degree. At least that's the story I told myself for a very long time. At the time, I didn't know that there was a difference between communications and communication studies. Communications, TV, radio, journalism, newspaper, communication studies, groupthink, public speaking, nonverbal communication, cultural communication. When I was taking these classes, I was so interested in them that I didn't even think that maybe there was another side to the coin. And so for a long time, I told myself, oh shoot, I got the wrong degree. If I would have got the right degree, I probably would have already been a talk show host by now. So after I graduated, I did two things. I started my YouTube channel and I began working in radio. And after working in radio for 2 years, I found that it still had that same air of choosing just one. Choose one path within radio. Are you going to be in sales? Are you going to be in marketing? Are you going to be the program director? Or are you going to be a personality? Of course, I chose the personality. And then when I started walking down that path, I started to feel that same kind of containment, that I was only allowed to talk about certain things, celebrity gossip being one of them, while also having to listen to the same playlist on repeat over and over and over. That just didn't jive with me. So then I went to print media, and the same thing, just in a different way. And so since then, I've tried a lot of different things, trying to choose just one, but feeling a lot of shame and guilt for not being able to do so. Every job that I had, I felt like I couldn't be my full self in it. And I couldn't help that I had so many other curiosities about how the world operated, how people worked, what this whole life is about. Until I came across this world, the generalist and the specialist. I'll share an excerpt from the book, The Power of Myth, that I read a bit to you all yesterday. And just to give you some context, it's an interview style book that was written in 1988 between Bill Moyers and Joseph Campbell. Bill Moyers being the interviewer and Joseph Campbell being the interviewee. And so it's talking about the power of myth. And so for those of you who don't know what it is, according to this book, is that myths bring us messages and that they're stories about the wisdom of life. And so it says, what we're learning in our schools is not the wisdom of life. We're learning technologies. We're getting information. There's a curious reluctance on the part of faculties to indicate the life values of their subjects. In our sciences today, and this includes anthropology, linguistics, the study of religions, and so forth, there's a tendency to specialization. And when you know how much a specialist scholar has to know in order to be a competent specialist, you can understand this tendency. To study Buddhism, for instance, you have to be able to handle not only all the European languages in which the discussions of the Oriental come, particularly French, German, English, and Italian, but also Sanskrit, Chinese, Japanese, Tibetan, and several other languages. Now, this is a tremendous task. Such a specialist can't also be wondering about the difference between Iroquois, Algonquin. Specialization tends to limit the field of problems that the specialist is concerned with. Now, the person who isn't a specialist, but a generalist like myself, sees something over here that he has learned from one specialist, something over there that he has learned from another specialist, and neither of them has considered the problem of why this occurs here and also there. So the generalist, and that's a derogatory term, by the way, for academics, gets into a range of other problems that are more genuinely human, you might say, than specifically cultural. Then along comes the journalist who has a license to explain things he doesn't understand. This is not only a license, but something that is put upon him. He has an obligation to educate himself in public. And so when I heard that word for the first time, a generalist, my eyes lit up. Oh my goodness, this whole time, I have felt so much shit and shame for not being a specialist. And as we've been talking about in the last few videos about ushering a new kind of world, recognizing that the past 100 years, if not longer, we needed specialists. We needed those who do one specific job to keep the machine running. But now that we have this thing called artificial intelligence, it seems like the machine is going to be running itself. So for everyone who ended up just choosing just one, the specialist, and followed that path, what is that going to look like in the society that's coming? And so when I say that I'm truly a generalist, yesterday I got caught up on Jubilee's YouTube channel, continuing to watch the different perspectives of other people. But then there was a video that came up that talked about how the Conversations with God author, Neil Donald Walsh, is demonic. And as I've shared with you in the past couple videos, Conversations with God has become a core text for me in my current beliefs. So out of curiosity, I clicked on the video, and it was someone who actually used to be invited to similar events as Neil Donald Walsh. But then she found Jesus, or Jesus found her, and she started walking down a different spiritual path. And it was interesting to watch because I started to feel in my body these tensions, these visceral feelings of what I agreed with and what I didn't agree with. And to be honest, I think it was more in the messaging and in the delivery of what she was trying to say. And so even though it was slightly uncomfortable, it was also reaffirming because it tells me and gives me signals as to what's true for me right now. So I do this often. I actually watch content that I feel like goes against my current values. For instance, there was a moment when I was watching a lot of Charlie Kirk videos and debates when he would go to college campuses and have debates with college students. Or the other day, I watched the Jubilee video called Surrounded with Julia Michaels, the famous fitness trainer, against or versus 20 body positivity activists. Another video I recently watched was one Christian woman versus 20 New Age women. And even at one point in my reading Conversations with God, I was also reading a book called Outwitting the Devil. And for some people, maybe the 85% that we talked about in a video previously, they may not be able to watch content that makes them feel uncomfortable, especially when it goes against their ego, their values, their beliefs, and their identities. Some people might even question the source. But for me, I'm at a place in my life where I'm not worried about the source because I recognize that we all have missed the mark, that we all have vices, and that we all have sinned and will continue to sin. From my observations and findings, I've found other definitions of sin that currently speak true to me right now. And here's a couple that I'm going to share with you. One of them is in this book. The unpardonable sin in Campbell's book was the sin of inadvertence, of not being alert, not quite awake. Another definition. Sin is simply getting out of touch with that of harmony. And simply put, sin is missing the mark. It can be sin in missing the mark of not thinking like Christ-like. It could be sin of missing the mark of not being in harmony with others. It could be sin of not doing an action and deed that's towards oneness and peace. That's what sin is to me, based off of my findings and understandings. And again, I'm not so worried about the messenger because I recognize that we all come from the same ultimate source. and also because I'm familiar with myself and who I currently am and who I'm creating myself to be, that, for instance, a well-renowned spiritual guru like Deepak Chopra, who I think found himself in the Epstein files, is getting a lot of flack right now. But again, we all have our vices. We all have sin and will continue to sin. We will continue to miss the mark. And the thing is, how can we have grace for ourselves? How can we give grace to others? And I believe that grace increases when you have a general practice of studyship, when you're learning and studying from different kinds of messengers, from those you agree with and from those you don't agree with, and everything in between. For instance, like Bruce Lee. There is a section in the book that I shared with you a few videos ago from Be Water, My Friend. And we were talking about how he is a generalist. And it says, when it came to developing his art of Jeet Kune Do, he delved not into just standard martial arts for inspiration and information. He looked at Western boxing, fencing, biomechanics, and philosophy. He admired the simplicity of boxing, incorporating its ideas into his footwork and his upper body tools, jab, cross, hook, bob, weave, etc. And from fencing, which I took a 101 class in college, it was super fun, he began by looking at the footwork range and timing of the stop hit and a riposte, both techniques that meet attacks and defenses with preemptive moves. From biomechanics, he studied movement as a whole, seeking to understand the physical laws of motion while understanding biological efficiencies and strengths. And within philosophy, he read widely from both Eastern and Western writers such as Lao Tzu, Alan Watts, and Krishnamurti, while also picking up popular self-help books of the day. He was open to all inspiration and all possibilities, his only limit being the limit of his own imagination and understanding. So I'm talking to my younger self, that to not feel any shame or guilt for not choosing just one. And that guidance and piece of advice was for the world of what once was, new kind of world, in a world that you're going to need specialists and generalists. The problem is, the old world didn't tell you that there was an option, that there was another way of being, where you're allowed to explore all of your interests and curiosities. So again, don't feel the pressure to choose just one. What's more important is that you stay true to yourself in the many things that you choose, and to take the time in getting to know yourself in the things you enjoy and the things that you don't enjoy. And in a world that's constantly telling us who to be, it's important to have range from those kinds of messagings to understand what our true message is. So as the young people say, do you, boo. In other words, live and let live. Whether you're a specialist or generalist, we all have something to contribute. We all have something to give. I'd love to hear in the comments below. Are you a specialist? And what is it that you specialize in? Are you a generalist? And what are the things that you love studying and learning about? And if you feel like that there's other ways of being within this category of work, I'd love to hear it. I hope that what I shared with you today supports you on your journey. And of course, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And the last thing I want to share with all of you is that we've been getting to know each other for a few videos now. And I want to let you know that I'm always in a place to contribute through coaching, whether it's one-on-one coaching or small group coaching. This is why I'm here. As I shared with you all, I wanted to be an educator, but why I was reluctant to it is because I didn't like the idea of teaching students that didn't want to be there. And let's be honest, nowadays, that's probably 90% of the class. For me, I'm here to focus on the 10%, the one that's truly here, that wants to learn, to practice, to implement. So just know that wherever this channel goes and whatever I end up doing, I've made a decision to carve out time for coaching. So if that's something that you're interested in, fill out the form below to see if we're a good match. And I look forward to getting to know you and connecting with you in the near future.